Zethkar pressed his scaled hand against the cold metal wall of his escape pod and tried not to think about dying. The small craft drifted through the endless black of space like a piece of broken metal, silent and powerless. 3 days had passed since the pirates destroyed his merchant ship, and he was the only one who made it to an escape pod alive. The pod was barely big enough for him to stretch his long reptilian body. Red warning lights blinked on the control panel, telling him what he already knew. The air was running out. The heating system was failing. Soon, the cold would creep into his bones and stop his heart. He looked at the small screen that showed the space around him. Stars dotted the darkness like tiny white dots, but they were all so far away. No planets, no ships, no hope. This part of space was empty and forgotten. No one came here except traders taking shortcuts between the outer colonies. Zethkar's people, the Vorthak, were proud and strong. They ruled over dozens of worlds and saw themselves as the masters of their part of the galaxy. Other species were either useful servants or enemies to be crushed. The Vorthak took what they wanted and gave nothing back. He had been different from most of his kind. While other Vorthak became soldiers or rulers, he chose to be an engineer. He liked to build things and fix broken machines. His family was not happy with this choice, but they let him work on merchant ships that carried goods between Vorthak worlds. Now he wished he had listened to them. If he had become a warrior, maybe he would have fought off the pirates. Maybe his crew would still be alive. Maybe he would not be floating alone in a broken pod waiting to die. The temperature inside the pod kept dropping. Zethkar pulled his arms close to his body and tried to stay warm. His breath came out as small, white clouds in the cold air. The atmospheric mixture that kept him alive was almost gone. His species needed a special blend of nitrogen and methane to breathe, and there was less than 6 hours left. He thought about his home world, with its purple skies and warm methane seas. He thought about his family, who would never know what happened to him. They would wait for messages that would never come. Eventually, they would assume he died in some accident far from home. The Vorthak had rules about death. A warrior who died in battle was honored. A ruler who died serving the empire was remembered. But a merchant who died running from pirates would be forgotten. His name would fade away like smoke. Zethkar closed his eyes and tried to accept his fate. At least the end would be quick. When the air ran out, he would fall asleep and never wake up. It was better than being captured by pirates or slowly starving to death. A soft beeping sound made him open his eyes. The communication system was picking up something. He looked at the display with surprise. For 3 days, the space around him had been completely quiet. Now there was a signal. He pressed buttons with shaking fingers, trying to boost the receiver. The signal was very weak, almost lost in the background noise of space. It was not a message or a distress call. It was something else. The scanning, equipment on some kind of ship. Hope filled his chest like warm air. Someone was out there. Someone was looking around, maybe searching for something. But as quickly as the hope came, doubt followed it. What kind of ship would be in this empty region? Pirates often use these forgotten areas to hide from patrol ships. If they found him, they might kill him just for fun. The signal got stronger. Whatever ship it was coming closer. Zethkar tried to fix his broken distress beacon, but the damage was too bad. He could receive signals, but could not send them. The approaching ship would have to find him with their own sensors. Minutes passed like hours. The signal kept getting stronger, and new ones joined it. The ship was scanning everything in the area very carefully. Their equipment was good, better than most merchant vessels had. This was either a military ship or a research vessel. Zethkar looked at his air supply again. 4 hours left, maybe less. If this ship did not find him soon, it would not matter who they were. He would be dead before they could help him. The scanning signals were very close now. Zethkar pressed his face against the small window of his pod and looked out into space. At first, he saw nothing but stars. Then, like a ghost appearing from the darkness, he saw lights moving in the distance. It was a ship, but not like any he had seen before. The design was strange and unfamiliar. It was smaller than a Vorthak warship but bigger than a simple merchant vessel. The hull was smooth and white, with blue markings along the sides. Solar panels and sensor arrays stuck out from the main body like metal wings. The ship moved slowly and carefully, as if the crew was being very cautious. Searchlights swept back and forth, illuminating pieces of space debris and small asteroids. They were definitely looking for something. Zethkar tried to remember what he knew about the different species in this part of the galaxy. The ship design did not match any that he recognized. The proportions were wrong for Vorthak ships. The materials looked different from what the other advanced species used. This was something new. The ship came closer, and Zethkar could see more details. Windows lined the sides, glowing with warm yellow light. He could see shadows moving inside, the shapes of the crew going about their work. The ship looked peaceful, not like a warship ready for battle. But appearances could lie. The Vorthak had learned long ago that other species were dangerous and unpredictable. His people survived by being strong and suspicious. Trust was weakness. Cooperation was foolishness. Only power mattered. Still, what choice did he have? His pod was failing, and death was only hours away. Even if these strangers were hostile, even if they wanted to hurt him, at least he would not die alone in the cold darkness. At least someone would know that he had existed. The searchlight swept across his section of space. For a moment, one of the bright beams passed right over his pod. Zethkar held his breath, hoping they had seen him. The light moved on, and his heart sank. Then the light came back. It stayed focused on his pod, and he could feel the ship's sensors examining him. They had found him. The question now was what they would do about it. More lights appeared as the strange ship changed course. Toward him. Zethkar could see it more clearly now. The hull was marked with symbols he did not recognize, written in a script that looked nothing like Vorthak writing or any other language he knew. The ship slowed down as it approached. Zethkar could see figures moving behind the windows, pointing in his direction. They were talking to each other, probably deciding whether to help him or ignore him. Maybe they were debating whether he was dangerous. His pod shook slightly as the bigger ship's gravity field affected it. The rescue was beginning, but Zethkar did not know if he was being saved or captured. All he could do was wait and hope that these strangers, whoever they were, had some mercy in their hearts. The air in his pod was getting thin. Each breath was harder than the last. Time was running out, and his fate now rested in the hands of aliens he had never seen before. For the first time in days, Zethkar allowed himself to hope that he might live to see another day. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSS Pioneer and watched the rescue operation unfold on the main screen. The alien escape pod floated like a metal coffin in the darkness, battered and barely holding together. Red emergency lights blinked weakly through its small windows. Life signs are getting weaker, Dr. Lisa Kim reported from her science station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, analyzing data from their sensors. The being inside is definitely alive, but barely. The pod's atmosphere is almost gone. Jake nodded and turned to his communications officer. Nina, any luck with contact? Nina Brooks shook her head, frustrated. I'm trying every frequency and language protocol we have. The pod's communication system is damaged. I can receive some data from their computers, but I can't talk to whoever is inside. The bridge crew worked quietly around them. Everyone knew this was their first contact with a completely unknown species. Everything they did in the next few hours could change how two civilizations would relate to each other for generations to come. Captain, Chief Engineer Ryan Walsh called from his station near the back of the bridge. I've been studying the pod's design and the data we're getting from their life support systems. This species breathes a nitrogen-methane mixture. It's completely toxic to us. Jake frowned. How toxic? One breath of their atmosphere would kill a human in minutes, and our oxygen would poison them just as fast. We can't just bring them aboard and put them in sick bay. Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments. I'm reading the biological data from their pod's medical sensors. The being inside is reptilian, cold-blooded, and much larger than a human. They need specific temperature and atmospheric conditions to survive. Jake walked over to the main viewing window and looked out at the damaged pod. Inside was a living, thinking being who was probably scared and desperate. The alien had no way of knowing if the humans were friendly or hostile. For all they knew, the humans might be planning to dissect them or sell them as a slave. "How long do they have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 2 hours," Dr. Kim said quietly. "Their oxygen levels are dropping fast and their body temperature is falling. Even if we could communicate with them, I'm not sure we can solve the atmospheric problem in time." Security Chief Paul Grant stepped forward. He was a big man with gentle eyes who had joined the exploration service to see new worlds, not to fight wars. "Captain, what are your orders?" Jake looked around at his crew. These people had volunteered for a peaceful mission to explore distant star systems and make contact with new civilizations. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But they were also humans, and humans had certain values that could not be compromised. "We save them," Jake said simply. "Whatever it takes." Ryan scratched his beard and looked worried. "Sir, the technical problems are huge. We would need to create a completely separate life support system, modify our airlocks, and figure out how to safely transfer them without killing both them and us in the process." "Then we figure it out," Jake said. "Dr. Kim, I want you to start working on synthesizing their atmospheric mixture. Ryan, modify Cargo Bay 3 for their environmental needs. Paul, get your team ready for a dangerous extraction. Nina, keep trying to establish communication." The crew scattered to their tasks. Jake remained on the bridge, watching the alien pod drift helplessly in space. He thought about the first time humans had received help from strangers. When early sailing ships were lost at sea, other vessels would risk their own safety to rescue survivors. It was an old human tradition that went back thousands of years. In the science lab, Dr. Kim worked frantically to analyze the alien's biological needs. The pod's computers contained detailed medical information about its occupant. The being was called Zethkar, and he belonged to a species that evolved on a world with thick methane clouds and high atmospheric pressure. "Tony, help me with this," she called to xenobiologist Tony Carter. "We need to create an atmosphere that's 70% nitrogen and 30% methane, with trace amounts of hydrogen sulfide, and we need to do it in less than 2 hours." Looked at the chemical analysis and whistled. "That mixture would kill us instantly, but it's not impossible to make. The ship's atmospheric processors can handle it if we set up a completely isolated system." Meanwhile, in engineering, Ryan and his team worked to modify Cargo Bay 3. They installed additional airlocks, independent life support systems, and heating units. The bay would become a temporary home for their alien guest, assuming they could get him there alive. "The hardest part will be the transfer," Ryan explained to his assistant engineer Kate Davis. "We can't open his pod in our atmosphere, and we can't enter his pod without environmental suits. One mistake and we all die." Paul Grant and his security team prepared for the most dangerous rescue operation any of them had ever attempted. They would have to cut through the alien pod's hull, extract an unknown being who might panic and fight them, and get everyone safely to the modified cargo bay. "Remember," Paul told his team, "this being has been floating in space for days thinking he was going to die. He's probably terrified. We need to be gentle and careful, even if he tries to resist." On the bridge, Nina finally made a breakthrough. The alien pod's computer system used a mathematical language protocol. She couldn't talk to Zethkar directly, but she could send simple messages using numbers and basic concepts. "Captain, I think. I can tell him we're here to help," Nina said excitedly. "I'm sending mathematical sequences that show we understand his situation and want to rescue him." Inside his failing pod, Zethkar watched in amazement as symbols appeared on his communication screen. The strange ship was trying to talk to him using mathematics. The messages were simple but clear. "We see you. We want to help. Do not fear. Zethkar." Had never heard of any species that would risk themselves to save a stranger. In Vorthak society, weakness was despised, and cooperation was seen as foolishness. Yet these aliens were obviously preparing some kind of rescue operation. He sent back mathematical sequences of his own. I understand. I am dying. Thank you. The reply came quickly. We are coming. Stay calm. You will live. Dr. Kim rushed onto the bridge with her analysis complete. Captain, I've synthesized their atmospheric mixture. It's ready to pump into Cargo Bay 3. The temperature and pressure controls are set to match their homeworld conditions. Jake nodded. Ryan, how are the modifications coming? Almost done. Sir, we've created a completely isolated environment. The alien can live there safely while we figure out long-term solutions. Paul, are your people ready? Yes, sir. We'll use cutting tools to open their pod carefully, then transfer them to a portable environmental chamber for the trip to Cargo Bay 3. It's risky, but it should work. Jake looked at his crew with pride. In less than 2 hours, they had solved problems that would normally take weeks of planning. They had worked together like a perfect machine, each person contributing their skills to save a life. Nina, send another message, Jake ordered. Tell our friend that we're starting the rescue now. The message went out. We come now. Be ready. You are safe. Sethkar read the message and felt something he had never experienced before. These strangers, these unknown aliens, were risking their own lives to save him. They owed him nothing. They had never met his species before, yet they were treating him like he mattered, like his life had value. As the human rescue ships approached his pod, Sethkar began to understand that everything he had been taught about other species might be wrong. Maybe there were civilizations in the galaxy that valued compassion over conquest, cooperation over domination. Maybe his people had been missing something important all along. The cutting tools began to work on his pod's hull, and bright lights flooded through the opening. Figures in environmental suits reached in to help him, moving slowly and carefully to avoid frightening him. For the first time in days, Sethkar allowed himself to believe that he might actually survive. Sethkar woke up in a warm room filled with the sweet smell of methane. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. The last thing he remembered was floating in his broken escape pod, watching alien figures in strange suits reach toward him through the torn metal. He sat up slowly and looked around. The room was larger than his pod, but smaller than most ship quarters he had known. The walls were smooth and white, with soft blue lights running along the edges. Everything looked clean and new, completely different from the rough metal of Vorthak ships. A large window took up most of one wall. Through it, he could see the inside of a much bigger ship. Humans walked through the corridors outside, going about their daily work. They moved with purpose, but without the harsh military discipline he was used to seeing among his own people. The air tasted right. The temperature felt perfect on his scaled skin. Somehow, these aliens had created an exact copy of his homeworld's atmosphere. The engineering skill required for such a task was impressive, but what amazed him more was that they had bothered to do it at all. A soft chime sounded, and a section of the wall slid open. A human female entered, wearing a white coat and carrying a small device that looked like a medical scanner. She moved slowly and kept her hands visible, probably trying not to frighten him. She stopped a few feet away and held up the device. Symbols appeared on a small screen, mathematical sequences that formed words he could understand. The translation system was working. I am Dr. Lisa Kim, the message read. How do you feel? Sethkar touched the communication panel on the wall next to his bed. His own words appeared as mathematical symbols that the human device could translate. I am alive, thank you. Dr. Kim smiled, and somehow Sethkar understood that this expression meant kindness among humans. You were very sick when we found you. Your body temperature was too low and you had not eaten in days. We have been giving you nutrients through a feeding tube while you slept. Sethkar looked down and saw a thin tube connected to his arm. The liquid flowing through it had a familiar taste when he licked his lips. It was nourishment designed for his species, perfectly balanced for his biological needs. How do you know what food my people eat? He asked through the translator. We studied the medical data from your escape pod, Dr. Kim explained. Your people keep very good health records. We learned about your biology and created what you need. This was beyond anything Sethkar had imagined possible. Not only had these humans rescued him, but they had spent time and effort learning about his species just to take better care of him. In Vorthak society, prisoners and rescued enemies were kept alive with the minimum effort required. Comfort and proper care were signs of weakness. Dr. Kim ran her scanner over him, checking his vital signs. Your body is healing well. In a few days, you should be completely recovered. Why? Zethkar asked. Why what? Why do you help me? I am not your species. You owe me nothing. My people would not help you if our positions were reversed. Dr. Kim looked surprised by the question. She sat down in a chair near his bed and thought, for a moment before answering. Because you needed help and we could provide it. That's what decent beings do for each other. But I am a stranger. You do not know if I am dangerous or if my people are your enemies. Are you dangerous? Dr. Kim asked with what Zethkar was learning to recognize as humor. No. I am an engineer, not a warrior. Then there is no problem. As for your people being our enemies, we will worry about that if it happens. Right now, you are our guest and our patient. The concept was difficult for Zethkar to understand. The Vorthak made decisions based on strength, advantage, and potential threat. These humans seemed to make decisions based on much simpler ideas about right and wrong. Over the next few hours, other crew members visited him. Captain Jake Morrison came to check on his recovery and to ask if he needed anything to be more comfortable. Chief Engineer Ryan Walsh explained how they had modified the cargo bay to create a perfect environment for him, and he seemed genuinely proud of the technical achievement. Each human Zethkar met treated him with the same kindness and respect. They answered his questions about their ship and their mission without suspicion or secrecy. They shared information about human culture and history as freely as if he were a longtime friend. Communications Officer Nina Brooks spent several hours improving the translation system so they could have more complex conversations. She seemed excited about the challenge of bridging the language gap between their species. Your people have a beautiful mathematical language system, she told him. It's much more efficient than our verbal communication methods for technical discussions. Mathematics is universal, Zethkar replied. All intelligent species must understand numbers and patterns to build starships. That's what we hoped when we first tried to contact you. We knew that if you were smart enough to build an escape pod, you were smart enough to understand mathematical concepts. Through these conversations, Zethkar learned about human society. They came from a world called Earth, where hundreds of different cultures had learned to work together instead of conquering each other. Their government was based on cooperation between many nations, not domination by the strongest. How do you make decisions if everyone has different opinions? Zethkar asked Captain Morrison during one visit. We talk about it until we find solutions that work for everyone, Jake explained. It takes longer than having one ruler make all the choices, but the results are usually better because more people contribute ideas. What if talking fails? What if some groups refuse to cooperate? Sometimes, that happens. But we've learned that most conflicts can be solved if people really try to understand each other. Fighting should always be the last choice, not the first. This was completely opposite to Vorthak philosophy. His people believed that conflict was natural and that the strong should rule over the weak. Cooperation was seen as a sign that a species lacked the will to survive and prosper. Yet here were the humans who had obviously prospered enough to build starships and explore distant galaxies, and they had done it through cooperation rather than conquest. Their ship was full of different types of people working together toward common goals. Zethkar began to see his own society in a new light. The Vorthak controlled many worlds and commanded great fleets. But what had they really accomplished? They spent most of their energy fighting each other for power and dominance. They rarely created anything new or beautiful. They took what others had built rather than building things themselves. Engineer Walsh showed him around the ship's workshops and laboratories. Human scientists and technicians worked on dozens of different projects, from improving their engines to studying strange space phenomena they had discovered. We're explorers, Walsh explained. Our mission is to learn new things and meet new people. Every star system we visit teaches us something different. Are you not afraid of what you might find? Some species could be hostile or dangerous. Sure, there's always risk in exploration, but the potential benefits are worth it. Look at what happened with you. We found someone who needed help, and now we're learning about a whole new civilization. My people might not welcome contact with humans, Zethkar warned. The Vorthak Empire sees other species as either tools to be used or obstacles to be removed. Walsh nodded seriously. We've encountered species like that before. It's always unfortunate, but it doesn't change how we operate. We'll try diplomacy first, and if that fails, we'll defend ourselves. But we won't attack first or give up on the possibility of peace. As the days passed, Zethkar felt his strength returning. The humans had saved his life and treated him with more kindness than he had ever received from his own people. But more than that, they had shown him a different way of thinking about the galaxy and his place in it. For the first time in his life, Zethkar began to question everything he had been taught about strength, weakness, and what it meant to be truly civilized. The alarm on the bridge of the HSS Pioneer started ringing at 0600 hours ship time. Captain Jake Morrison rushed from his quarters to find his crew already at their stations, staring at the sensor displays with worried expressions. "Report," Jake ordered as he took his captain's chair. 12 ships just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, Communications Officer Nina Brooks announced. "They're big, heavily armed, and heading straight for us." Dr. Lisa Kim looked up from her science console. The ship designs match the database records from Zethkar's escape pod. They're Vorthak Imperial vessels. Jake felt his stomach tighten. They had known this moment might come. Zethkar had warned them that his people would eventually search for him, but Jake had hoped they would have more time to figure out a peaceful solution. "How long until they reach us?" he asked. "At their current speed, about 4 hours, Chief Engineer Ryan Walsh replied. "The lead ship is much larger than the others. It looks like a command vessel." Jake touched the intercom button. "Zethkar, please report to the bridge. We need to talk." Within minutes, Zethkar arrived wearing a special environmental suit that allowed him to breathe his methane atmosphere while moving through the human sections of the ship. His reptilian face showed worry and fear. "They have found us," he said through his translator. It was not a question. 12 Vorthak ships, Jake confirmed. "Can you tell us what we're dealing with?" Zethkar studied the sensor readings on the main screen. His scaled hands trembled slightly as he recognized the ship classifications. The large one is a Dreadnought-class battleship. The others are heavy cruisers and destroyers. This is a full Imperial war fleet. "Why would they send so many ships to rescue one person?" Dr. Kim asked. "They are not here to rescue me," Zethkar said quietly. "They are here to reclaim Imperial property and punish those who stole it." "Property?" Jake's voice was sharp with anger. "In Vorthak law, all citizens belong to the Empire. I am not a person to be rescued. I am an asset to be recovered, and you are thieves who must be dealt with." Security Chief Paul Grant leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of weapons are we looking at?" Zethkar's expression grew even more worried. "Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, ion disruptors. Each of those cruisers has more firepower than most planetary defense systems. The Dreadnought could destroy a small moon." The bridge fell silent as everyone realized the hopelessness of their situation. The Pioneer was a research vessel, not a warship. Their weapons were designed for clearing space debris and defending against pirates, not fighting an Imperial battle fleet. "Incoming transmission," Nina announced. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main display filled with the image of a Vorthak officer in elaborate military armor. His scales were darker than Zethkar's, and his eyes glowed with cold intelligence. Scars covered his face and neck, marks of honor in Vorthak culture. "I am War Commander Thexmore of the Imperial Dreadnought Dominator's Fang." The alien spoke in perfect human language. "You are harboring stolen Imperial property. Surrender the engineer Zethkar immediately, and we may allow your ship to depart, unharmed." Jake stood up and faced the screen. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the exploration vessel HSS Pioneer. Zethkar is our guest, not our prisoner. He's free to leave if he chooses, but we won't force him to go anywhere." War Commander Thexmore's eyes narrowed. You speak of choice as if this creature has rights. He is property of the Vorthak Empire, bred and trained to serve Imperial interests. Return him now, or face the consequences." "What consequences?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Your ship will be destroyed and your crew will be executed for theft of Imperial assets. You have 1 hour to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were scientists and explorers. Not soldiers, but he could see determination in their faces. None of them would agree to hand over Zethkar against his will. "Well," Jake said with forced calm, "I guess we need to figure out how to outrun or outsmart a Vorthak battle fleet." Ryan Walsh was already working at his engineering station. "Captain, their ships are faster than ours in open space, but we're in the middle of that nebula field where we found Zethkar. The interference from all that charged gas might give us some advantages." "What kind of advantages?" "Their targeting systems will have trouble locking onto us. Their long-range sensors won't work well. And if we can get deep enough into the densest part of the nebula, their bigger ships might have trouble following us." Dr. Kim studied the astronomical data on her screens. The nebula surrounds an unstable neutron star. The gravity fields and radiation are constantly changing. It's dangerous for any ship to navigate, but smaller vessels have a better chance. Paul Grant looked grim. "Even if we can hide in the nebula, we can't stay there forever. Eventually, we'll have to come out, and they'll be waiting." Zethkar had been listening to the discussion with growing distress. Finally, he stepped forward. "Captain Morrison, I should go with them. I am not worth starting a war between our species." "That's not your choice to make," Jake replied firmly. "You're under our protection now. Besides, I don't think War Commander Thexmore plans to let us go even if we hand you over. He sees us as a threat to Imperial authority." "He is right," Zethkar said sadly. "The Empire cannot allow word to spread that humans showed kindness to a Vorthak citizen. It would make other species think the Empire is weak. They will destroy your ship and claim you attacked them first." Jake nodded. He had suspected as much. The Vorthak couldn't afford to let the story of human compassion reach other civilizations. It would undermine their whole philosophy of rule through fear and strength. "Nina, send a message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them our situation and our coordinates. If we don't make it out of this, at least they'll know what happened." "Already sent, sir," Nina replied. "But the nearest human fleet is weeks away. Then we're on our own." Jake turned to his crew. "I won't order anyone to fight. This isn't what you signed up for. Anyone who wants to can take a shuttle and try to reach neutral space." Chief Engineer Walsh snorted. "Captain, with respect, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said. We're not abandoning you or Zethkar." "Ryan's right," Dr. Kim added. "We knew the risks when we joined the exploration service. Besides, someone has to make sure the galaxy learns what really happened here." Security Chief Grant stood up and checked his sidearm. "My people are ready, Captain. We might not be a warship, but we won't go down without a fight." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These ordinary humans, who had chosen to risk everything for a stranger from another world. He felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. They were about to face impossible odds, but they would face them together. "All right then," he said. "Nina, send one more message to War Commander Thexmore. Tell him that Zethkar chooses to stay with us and we choose to protect him. If he wants a fight, he's got one." As the message was transmitted, the 12 Vorthak warships began to close in on the lone human vessel. The gap between the two fleets narrowed with each passing minute, and the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. In the depths of the charged nebula, ancient forces stirred as if awakened by the approaching conflict. The neutron star pulsed, with deadly radiation, and the gas clouds swirled with electromagnetic storms. The stage was set for a battle that would test everything the humans believed about courage, sacrifice, and the power of doing what was right. The HSS Pioneer dove deep into the swirling gas clouds of the nebula, its hull shaking as electromagnetic storms lashed against the shields. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his chair as the ship bucked and rolled through the charged atmosphere. "Vorthak, fleet is following us in," Communications Officer Nina Brooks reported. They're having trouble with the interference, but they're still coming. Chief Engineer Ryan Walsh worked frantically at his console, watching the ship's systems strain against the hostile environment. Hull temperature is rising. The radiation is stronger than I expected. We can't stay in here much longer without serious damage. Dr. Lisa Kim studied the sensor readings, trying to map a safe path through the chaos. The neutron star is directly ahead. The gravity distortions are incredible. Any ship that gets too close will be torn apart. Through the swirling gas, they could see the lights of the Vorthak fleet pursuing them. The alien ships moved in formation, their heavy armor protecting them from the worst of the radiation. But they were also slower and less maneuverable than the human vessel. "Captain," Zethkar said from his position near the science station, "I know Vorthak military tactics. War Commander Thexmore will try to surround us and force us toward the neutron star. He thinks humans are cowards who will surrender rather than die." "Then he doesn't know humans very well," Jake replied grimly. "Ryan, can we use the neutron star's gravity to our advantage?" "Maybe," Ryan said, running calculations on his computer. "If we time it right, we could use the gravity field like a slingshot, but the margin for error is tiny. One mistake and we get pulled in and crushed." "What about their ships?" "The Dreadnought is too big and heavy. If it gets caught in the gravity well, it won't be able to escape. The smaller ships might make it, but they'll be damaged." Jake made his decision. "Plot a course toward the neutron star. We're going to thread the needle." The Pioneer changed direction, heading straight for the collapsed star that pulsed with deadly radiation. Behind them, the Vorthak ship spread, out in a hunting formation, trying to cut off all escape routes. On the bridge of the Dominator's Fang, War Commander Thexmore watched the human ship's suicidal course with satisfaction. "Foolish mammals," he growled to his officers. "They choose death over surrender. It saves us the trouble of executing them." But one of his subordinates, a young officer named Kextal, looked worried. "Commander, what if they have a plan? Humans are known for their unpredictable tactics." Thexmore struck the young officer across the face with his clawed hand. "Humans are weak creatures who value individual lives over imperial glory. They will break when faced with true power." On the Pioneer, the crew worked together with desperate efficiency. Dr. Kim calculated the exact trajectory needed to slingshot around the neutron star. Ryan pushed the engines to their maximum output while monitoring the ship's structural integrity. Nina tried to jam the Vorthak communication systems to prevent them from coordinating their attack. "Zethkar," Jake called out. "We need to know about their ship designs. What are their weak points?" Zethkar studied the tactical display, his reptilian mind processing the information quickly. "The Dreadnought has heavy forward shields but weaker protection on the sides and rear. The smaller ships rely on speed and numbers. If you can separate them from the main group, they become vulnerable." "How do we separate them?" "Create a distraction. Make them think you're doing something different than what you're actually planning." Jake smiled grimly. It was time to show the Vorthak what human creativity could accomplish when backed into a corner. "Nina, broadcast a message on all frequencies. Tell War Commander Thexmore that we're willing to negotiate. Make it sound like we're scared and ready to give up." Nina sent the message, her voice trembling with fake fear. "War Commander, please respond. We want to discuss terms for Zethkar's return. We don't want to die." The reply came quickly. "You will surrender unconditionally. Prepare to be boarded." "We need time to prepare," Nina responded. "Our crew needs to vote on the decision. Give us 30 minutes. Thexmore's laughter echoed across the communication channel. "Typical human weakness. You cannot even make a simple decision without consulting everyone. You have 15 minutes." The Vorthak fleet slowed down, confident that the human ship was trapped. The Dreadnought moved into position to block any escape while the smaller ships closed in from all sides. But Jake had no intention of surrendering. The Pioneer continued its dangerous course toward the neutron star, using the Vorthak ship's overconfidence against them. "Ryan, how long until we reach the gravity well?" 5 minutes, Captain. "The neutron star's pull is getting stronger. We're committed now." Dr. Kim watched her instruments with growing concern. "The radiation is increasing exponentially. Our shields are starting to weaken. Hold together just a little longer, Jake muttered, more to the ship than to his crew. As they approached the point of no return, the Vorthak ships realized what was happening. War Commander Thexmore's voice roared over the communication system. They're not surrendering. All ships attack immediately. The space around the Pioneer exploded with weapons fire. Plasma bolts and quantum torpedoes streaked through the charged gas, creating brilliant flashes of light. The human ship rolled and twisted, using its smaller size to avoid the worst of the barrage. Now, Ryan, Jake shouted. The Pioneer's engines fired at full power, using the neutron star's immense gravity to whip around the collapsed star like a stone from a slingshot. The ship's hull groaned under the tremendous forces, but it held together. Behind them, the Vorthak fleet tried to follow, but their heavier ships couldn't match the Pioneer's tight turn. 3 of the smaller cruisers were caught by the neutron star's gravity and pulled inexorably toward destruction, their crews screaming as their ships were crushed to atoms. The dreadnought, too massive to escape, fired its engines desperately, but could only watch as the human ship shot away into clear space on the other side of the neutron star. "We did it!" Ryan shouted as the Pioneer broke free from the gravity well. "We're clear." But the celebration was short-lived. 6 Vorthak ships had survived the passage and were still in pursuit, their weapons charging for another attack. "They're damaged but still dangerous," Paul Grant reported. "We need another plan." Zethkar had been watching the battle with growing amazement. These humans had outmaneuvered a superior Vorthak fleet, using nothing but courage, intelligence, and teamwork. Now he saw a chance to help them finish the job. "Captain Morrison," he said urgently, "I can help you defeat the remaining ships, but you must trust me. What do you have in mind?" "Let me send a message to the Vorthak crews. I will tell them what I have learned about humans. Some of them may listen." Jake hesitated. It was a huge risk. If Zethkar was still loyal to his own people, he could give away their position or battle plans, but the human captain had built his career on trusting others and giving them a chance to prove themselves. "Do it," he said. Zethkar activated the communication system and began broadcasting to the Vorthak ships in his own language. His words were passionate and sincere as he described the kindness the humans had shown him and the strength he had seen in their cooperation. On the pursuing ships, Vorthak crew members listened to his message with growing confusion and doubt. They had been taught that other species were inferior, but they had just watched a single human ship defeat most of their fleet using tactics they had never imagined. On one of the cruisers, a young engineer named Veltar turned to his captain. "Sir, what if the defector speaks the truth? What if we have been wrong about other species?" Similar conversations were taking place on the other ships. For the first time in their lives, many Vorthak crew members began to question the teachings of their empire. 2 of the pursuing ships suddenly changed course and jumped to hyperspace, their crews refusing to continue the attack. A 3rd ship suffered a mutiny when half the crew demanded to return home. Only 3 ships remained, and they were commanded by officers too loyal or too afraid to question their orders. But they were also outnumbered by the doubts of their own crews. The final battle was brief. The Pioneer used the confusion among the Vorthak ships to disable their weapons and engines, leaving them stranded but alive in space. As the human ship jumped to hyperspace in safety, War Commander Thexmore sat alone on the bridge of his crippled dreadnought, trying to understand how his mighty fleet had been defeated by a single exploration vessel. Months later, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began to seek out human ships, not as enemies or conquerors, but as potential friends and allies. Zethkar became the first alien to officially join the Human Exploration Service, and his testimony about human compassion began to change how civilizations viewed each other. The Vorthak Empire, weakened by defections and internal questioning, was forced to reconsider its philosophy of domination. Some planets broke away to form peaceful alliances with humans and other species. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew returned to Earth as heroes, but they insisted they had only done what any decent beings would do: They had answered a distress call, saved a life, and defended someone who couldn't defend himself.